The book is The Real McCain, Why Conservatives Don't Trust Him and Why Independents Shouldn't. Cliff Schecter wrote the book and joins us from Columbus, Ohio this morning. Mr. Schecter, there is a line in the book I think that I want you to jump off on if you can. You write that
Sure.
The evidence amassed in this book reveals that the real McCain's political calculus has never changed. Can you expand on that?
Well, yeah, he's someone who's always calculating what will get him to the top. He's a man who's driven solely or mostly by ambition. I make that point throughout the book, pointing out that, and I think a lot of people have more recently seen who the real McCain is by the campaign he's been willing to run against Barack Obama, filled with lies and distortions, and the fact that he's no longer talking to the press, the whole straight talk thing be damned. I was saying at the time that he's not the guy that the press has built him up to be. He's not the straight talker. He's not the guy who's a reformer. Those were useful tools to get him where he wanted to be, which he's admitted in his own book, was the ambition of becoming president.
So give some examples about the man the image that he projects, and then, in your opinion, the reality of John McCain.
Well, first of all, the image is that he'll take the tough fight, he'll stand up, and if he believes something, he won't turn back on that. Well, all we need to do is turn the clock back to the election around 2000 and see that in 1999 he was saying that we couldn't overturn Roe versus Wade, it would force women into horrible operations. Now that's one of the lead parts of his website, is to overturn Roe versus Wade, and he picks a running mate who would outlaw abortion even in cases of rape and incest. He said back then that we couldn't pass George W. Bush's tax cuts, and he actually voted against them, and the reason why was because they were, quote, budget busters, and they were disproportionately for the wealthy. Now, when we've got a larger gap between the poor and the rich than we had back then by far, he wants to make those very same tax cuts permanent. Whether it's gay rights, an issue that he switched his position on one television show, started off for it. He's had somebody whisper something in his ear during a commercial, then he was against it, and I could go on from creationism to what we were doing in Iraq. He would admit it now. Originally, he wasn't for the surge. Nobody talks about that. He said that we didn't do it right, and we either had needed to go in originally with a large number of troops, or it wasn't going to work. But then he changed mid-course and said, "Oh, now it'll work if we just do a surge." This has been the story of his career. He's a guy that back in 1990, during the first Gulf War, said that we couldn't even contemplate trading U.S. for Iraqi blood. He wanted no part of that war. A month later, he voted for it, and would later excoriate President Bill Clinton for getting us involved in Haiti and Somalia and Bosnia, but by the late 90s became one of the foremost advocates of the neoconservative policy of rogue state rollback, going in and overthrowing foreign governments by any means necessary. And of course we see what that's gotten us with Iraq. So this is all, he's never been a guy who's been consistent on any positions at all. Whatever at the time gets him the most press attention or furthers his chances of reaching the presidency. For a while he was thinking of running as an independent after he lost in 2000. So that was to make himself seem independent. He did a lot of this stuff. But when he realized he needed the Republican Party, if you look at the difference from where he went in 2002 to 2003 as one of the more liberal Republican senators to just about the most conservative, now to a point where he votes with George Bush 100% of the time, you can pretty much see that transformation.
The lines will be on the screen if you want to talk to Mr. Schecter about John McCain. We've divided them by political participant. It's for those who support Senator Obama, it's 202-737-0002. For those who support Senator McCain, 202-737-0001. 202-628-0205 if you support others. Two things you talk about also in the book are the military career, as far as the way, at least in your blog as well, about his military background and how he votes on military issues, and also the topic of a reformer that you highlight in the book. Can you talk about those two and what you see are changes?
Absolutely. I released recently an excerpt of my book. I wrote a piece for In These Times magazine, and it was a whole chapter that really went into not the press fluff that we have out there, but the truth on John McCain's record. He showed it very clearly recently when 75 U.S. senators came together, Republicans and Democrats, including veteran Republicans who served, Chuck Hagel, John Warner, co-sponsored and voted for the GI Bill of Rights. What did John McCain say? He said that it was too generous, and so he couldn't support it. And then he was not even there to vote on it. He was raising money out in California while they were voting for it. So anybody who thinks that this is a guy that supports veterans, a number of the different veterans group veterans groups give him ratings that are towards the bottom of their lists. Which group is it? IAVA, which is one of the major groups for veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, gives him a D rating. So he's voted against veteran health care. He's voted against all sorts of extra security and health measures for veterans. This has been a pattern going on for a while now. When Jim Webb proposed a year ago to allow the soldiers to have a longer time at home to equal time in Iraq, he voted against that. So he's been horrible on veterans issues. In terms of the reformer, again, it couldn't be further from the truth. We need to bring this back up. In light of the banking scandal going on right now, John McCain in the 1980s brought us to our first major banking scandal, the Keating Five scandal, where he, with his friend Charlie Keating, who ran the Lincoln Savings and Loan, who wanted to be deregulated so he could invest people's money in more risky types of investments. John McCain was one of the 5 guys and the most active in writing letters that were later deemed to be completely inappropriate to regulators, trying to tell him to back off and not regulate his industry. John McCain at the time was taking flights on Charlie Keating's personal jet for his whole family to the Bahamas. There were 9 flights in all. His wife invested $350,000 and her father, so his wife and his father-in-law, with Keating in shopping malls. And John McCain got over $200,000 in campaign contributions. What did we, the taxpayers, get? We got a failed huge savings and loan, a bailout, which should make anybody, that word should sound familiar to people recently, to the tune of trillions of dollars that we paid for. So to think that this guy could come in now, as he's claiming, and be this reformer that would regulate and reform the system is insane. He's got the very lobbyists working on his campaign. His campaign manager, Rick Davis, was the guy that was lobbying to deregulate Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as of a few years ago. And he's got 169 lobbyists on his campaign overall, either bundling money, working for him. So there's a very strong case that he's not only not a lobbyist, he'll take us in directions we've never even seen if he gets to Washington.
So the book runs about 200 pages. Could you tell a little bit about how you compiled your information and what sources you used to compile the information?
Sure. I started off about 2006 writing a number of articles on him because I was interested, and ironically enough, I'm somebody who was a McCain supporter back in 2000 as a Democrat. I bought into the straight talk. I liked what he was saying. I liked that he was standing up to his own party. And I think after that, election, when I saw he started to change, I became more interested and I started writing articles. So I did some basic research, but really at some point I decided that there was too much there that was not known by the media. There were too many cliches thrown around like straight talk and reformer that just were not accurate. So I decided to bring it into book-length form. I went out to Arizona and spent about 2 weeks out there speaking to all sorts of people that knew him from his early parts of his political career. I made an important decision in the beginning, that I was going to concentrate on John McCain, the politician, because John McCain, the military guy, I have all the respect for in the world. But the truth is as far as I'm concerned, he left his honor on the battlefield. He was a very honorable guy then. He's not been from day one since he got into politics. So I wanted to look at the political aspects because so often his life, what he did in the military is conflated with the politics, and it's very different. So I did go to Arizona. I was at the time living in Washington, so I spoke to plenty of sources all around town, from everything from nonprofit groups. A number of prominent conservatives spoke to me, both on and off the record. And so that's really how I did it. Going and obviously I did research too. I read his books. I read magazine articles on him and other things like that. But a lot of it was really by going to the 2 places where people knew him the most, D.C. and Arizona, and really talking to the people in the media and in the political establishment there who had dealt with him.